Fred, you have had such a wide career. You've had such a varied life. Athlete, and we're talking about first-class athlete. We're talking about an actor. We're talking about a sportscaster. Let's talk about your college career first, because that came first. You were a star at Northwestern University.
I went to Northwestern on a track scholarship. I wasn't really touted as a football player. I was a guy that was 205 pounds, who ran the 100, who ran the 440, and who won the shot put. I was Big Ten shot put champ, 100-yard dash, 440. Everything is relative to timing. My first year there, Eric Parsegan came at the same time that I did. He saw me running track one day and he asked me if I ever played football. And I said, nah, not really. I mean, I wasn't really excited about playing football. So he asked me if I would change my scholarship. He would be very happy and pay dividends to me, you know, give me a couple cookies and a couple candy bars. And I said, certainly, I'll change mine. So he turned me into a wide receiver. It was because of Eric Parsegan that I became a football player.
You really were a pioneer in doing that, because so many other athletes, and you look at an athlete like Bob Hayes, who was an Olympic track star, he became a very popular wide receiver for the Dallas flanker back in those days for the Dallas Cowboys. But you were really the pioneer when it came to that.
Pioneer is something that I've always been conscious of, because I've always been conscious of who I am, always had a goal, always knew where I was going, and always knew what I was going to do. My one career you missed from Northwestern, I graduated with an architecture and engineering degree, so I worked for 7 years during the off season when I was playing pro football for Bechtel Steel as a chief architect for Bechtel. So I was designing buildings in Dubai before Dubai was ever on the map. Everybody knows about Dubai now because of the conflict that we're in. But back in the 60s, I was designing energy buildings for Dubai for Bechtel Steel.
You said, I wanted to show who I am. For those who don't know who you are, who is Fred Williamson?
I'm a person who does whatever they want to do, whenever they want to do it, and as often as they want to do it. I control my own destiny as much as I possibly can. That's why I became a producer, a director, a writer, a star behind, in front of the camera, because when I first decided to go to Hollywood, I had an image of myself. I was going to Hollywood to be the hero, to be the star. But I knew at the time, in the 60s, that just wasn't happening for blacks to come into the business and become the hero and become the star. So I let them make me a marketable commodity, as I had already let football make me a marketable commodity, because I always understood marketing. So I let them make me by accepting a role to play Diane Carroll's boyfriend in the Julia show. My first movie was MASH, played Spear Chucker. Second movie was Tell Me You Love Me, Junie Moon, starring Liza Minnelli. So by then, I figured people knew who I was, and so I took that commodity away from them, created my own company, Po' Boy Productions, started raising money for my own films, and started making my own films. Consequently, I've made about 40 films as a producer, director, writer, and starred obviously in all my films. But then when I went to Hollywood, I had to do my own thing because I had 3 rules. 1, you can't kill me. 2, I got to win all my fights in the movie. 3, I get the girl at the end of the movie if I want her. They weren't ready for me because of the 60s and because that wasn't happening, and I said, thank you, and then I go make my own movies.
You used some real, you talk about old school, old-time actors, like Donald Red Barry, who made his name in those westerns of the 40s, and R.G. Armstrong. You really gave this film, in a way, an homage to old school acting as well as film production. Donald Barry, and this had to be just before he committed suicide,
yeah.
Was one of your players. R.G. Armstrong, another with that great drawl. He had one of the sweetest voices, did R.G. Armstrong. Talk about, your bringing these guys, giving them one more shot. A lot of what another Hollywood veteran, A.C. Lyles, did. He brought a lot of the old-time Hollywood players back. This is almost as an homage to them, isn't it?
Yeah, but see, old school is always the best school. The new guys always feel that they discovered something, that they don't give due to the guys who were there before them. And Don Redberry, I remember Don Redberry in the Westerns back in, when I was in high school. He used to jump up, his favorite punch was jumping way up in the air and throwing a right hook and knocking the guy out. That was his finale punch. Armstrong was a guy you know would always give you a sound performance. And so I knew that I could get great performances from these guys without spending a lot of money, because I didn't have a lot of money to hire top name actors, but I went for the performances. And I knew these guys would do that, which would make the picture, you know, even better. You know, if you watch a picture for performances, you don't always watch for names, because names don't mean box office anymore. Performances means box office.
And in essence, you were the name.
Yeah, I care. I knew I had my market. I knew my market. I knew what I had to do. Win the fights, don't die, and get the girl, okay? So I knew my market. I knew what my fans wanted to see me do, and to be that tough guy, because it was a time, it was a period in American black history where we needed heroes. There were no heroes. I was the beginning, along with my comrades that I put into my movies too, which were Jim Brown, Richard Roundtree, Billy D. Williams. We were the beginning, especially me and Jim, were the beginning of the tough guy, the winner, the black hero. When the smoke cleared, we were the ones left standing. That was something that was needed at that time, and I was very conscious of that. That's why those films were so hot and so popular in the early 70s. From 70 to 75, every film that had a black star was a big success.
You talked about powerful men. You talked about strong men, like a Billy D. Williamson, like a Jim Brown. And yet you started, and you brought this up, so I'm just going to take it from where it goes. Working with Julia, where you were very sensitive in working with Diane Carroll, and of course one of the greats in the business, Lloyd Nolan. You showed a very vulnerable side, and yet I don't think you showed much vulnerability, or sensitivity maybe is a better word, in your later films. Why is that?
Well, I was looking first for a new career. When I did Julia's show, I was looking for a new career. When I stopped doing the off season, I worked for Bechtel Steel. So it was 6 months of Bechtel and 6 months of football. So that was okay. I could handle that transition. But once I retired from football and went full-time sitting behind the desk, I lasted about 9 months. When the walls started to close in on me, it got very small. So I just realized I could not do this for the rest of my life. Take an hour off for lunch and work 9 to 5 and punch a clock. It just did not fit my personality. So I was looking for something else to do. One day I decided, after watching Julia's show for many times, I was going to go straight to Hollywood and become Diane Carroll's boyfriend on the Julia show. So I was in San Francisco at the time. I drove to Hollywood. About 3 days later, I was in front of the producer signing a contract to play her boyfriend, because I went to him and told him, I'm just what you need. You need somebody tall, dark, and handsome like me to play opposite Diane Carroll, because each week your new guest star role is a new boyfriend. So what you need is a regular boyfriend to play on the show. So that's how I got the part. So from the Julia show, timing was everything. We did it at 20th Century Fox lot. I happened to be in the commissary one day when a guy walks by and looks at me and he says, you're the Hammer, right? I said, yeah. He says, like, I'm getting ready to make a movie. I got a football game in it. I don't know anything about football. Would you direct all the football scenes? And I said, yeah, the movie was MASH. So that was my first directing job, was directing the football scenes. And I said, I made more money between those two shows than I did my whole 10-year professional football career. So I said, I should have been doing this a long time ago.
And Robert Altman, never regretted the fact that that's got to be one of the greatest staged football scenes ever in a movie. It's one of the great movies of all
time. I hired all the players. I got all the players together. I brought in some pros. I brought in Buck Buchanan. I brought in Timmy Brown. I brought in the Super Nat. I brought in about 10 pros so we could get some real live hitting and without faking the hitting, so we could make it real, and we did.
Let's go back to the NFL. You were drafted out of college by the San Francisco 49ers, played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then you were one of the ones that benefited by the war between the leagues when the AFL was formed, and you wound up with Lamar Hunt and the Kansas City Chiefs, really one of the echelon franchises.
Well, you know, I was number 2 draft choice, 49ers. Show how times really change. My signing bonus was $1,900. My starting salary was $9,500. At that time, Wyatt Tittle was a quarterback for the 49ers, and he was making $10,000. So I'm at the top of the echelon. So the first day of practice, they give me a red shirt, and I figured Well, they give me a red shirt because I'm a special person. It means I'm a hot shot in camp. He says, no, son, you're playing defense. I said, what do you mean defense? I'm an All-American flanker back. Don't you know who I am? You drafted me. I catch the ball. Anywhere you throw the ball, I'm going to catch the ball. Don't you know? He says, son, you're going to have to play defense. We know you're fast, and so you have to cover fast guys in the league because we got really fast receivers, and we don't have anybody on our team that as fast as you that can cover people like that. So after about 2 weeks of practice, I'm looking crazy, man. I can't cover nobody. I'm running backwards. I don't have no idea about how to cover anybody, how to run backwards. I had no idea what I was doing. So he comes to me and he says, son, you're not going to make this team. So I went to my room that night and I says, there's no way I'm going back to the ghetto and tell my boys that I wasn't tough enough to make the pro football team because they know I'm tough in the ghetto. I got a tough image. Now, I ain't tough enough to make a pro football team. I'm not going back with that stigma. So I came out the next day and I lined up like two yards off of R.C. Owens. So the coach is Red Hickey. He's going, Williamson, get back, get back. I said, there's no way. I'm not getting back. I'm covering this guy from right here. So he got very disgusted. He says, all right, go ahead, make him look bad. So R.C. Owens, they said R.C. Owens took a step off and I hit him. I gave him a shot right on the chest. Knocked him down, knocked the wind out of him. He's laying down there and he can't breathe. Coach comes running over and he says, damn it, Williamson, what are you doing? I said, I covered him. He said, yeah, you did, didn't you? He says, okay, cover this guy. So he sends out Money Stickles from Notre Dame, 240-pound tight end. He says, okay, cover him. So I do the same thing. Money comes up. I'm like 2 yards off of Money. He tries to run over me. I hit him with a shot. He hits me back. We're shot. Now we're on the ground. We're fighting. Coach runs over and he says, God dang it. He says, Money, they just killed the quarterback. Why are you out here fighting with Williamson? They just killed the quarterback. And he looks at me and he says, would you stop hammering my players so I could get some pass offense in? And by the way, you made the team. So that's how I got the name of Hammer.
And that's how you got the name Hammer.
Right.
You talk about R.C. Owens. I just have to talk about this as an aside. I think what people don't realize about R.C. Owens and Y.A. Tittle, in fact, was they had the great play, the alley-oop play, where Tittle would throw it up, and Owens had such a great jumping ability, he would actually leap over a defender and make it impossible to defend that play.
Anybody that's going to do an alley-oop on me is going to come down on the ground the same way. They're going to be laying on the ground stretched out because you are vulnerable when you lay yourself out like that. But he survived it because they weren't really crushing people like that until I got in the league. I'm the guy who really started all that hammer stuff and really trying to take a lick on the pass receivers and get respect. It was all about pass coverage. The bump and run, they started calling it, but then again, being a pioneer, I never got the credit because I didn't bump to run with anybody. I bumped to leave you there. I didn't want to run with you. I wanted to bump you so I wouldn't have to run with you. So then they finally named it after my rookie year. They started naming it Bump and Run, but I didn't get the credit for it.
And interestingly enough, that was the staple of the AFL. You jumped to the AFL,
yeah.
Again with the Chiefs, and that really made the bump. That league's rules in the secondary made the bump and run popular.
They didn't change it until after I retired. When I retired, then they changed it. You couldn't bump them within 5 yards. Within 5 yards, you could bump them. After 5 yards, you couldn't bump them. But that was my rule. So they changed it after. They couldn't do it while I was playing. After I retired, then they changed the rule.
You've done so much on the field, played in the Super Bowl, really made yourself a great reputation as a football player. What was the #1 highlight of your career that you think back upon?
The greatest football highlight is making the team, become one of the pros, because back in the day, being a pro was much more important than it is today. If you were a professional, that means they knew who you were, they knew your name. I'm spending money calling my guys back in Chicago saying, man, guess where I am? I'm in the 49 camp. This is now, man, you across the street. You're not nowhere. I'm telling you, I made the team. That was the most important, to be called a professional, to be a special football player and know all these superstars that you've watched over the years, and you know them and they know you. That, to me, was my greatest achievement.